You're listening to Pneuma, the crossroad of science and enlightenment. This podcast is a place where science meets soul and healing meets hope, where the latest in science meets ancient wisdom to illuminate the path toward healing and transformation. We break through stigma and misinformation to explore the transformative power of psychedelic therapy, holistic health, and the mind-body connection. Through stories, insight, and expert conversations, we provide practical solutions to help you reclaim your mental health, embrace your spirituality, and achieve true enlightenment. Hosted by Alan Wiederhold, author of the book Walking in the Garden, Discovering God Through Psychedelics. Alan is the consummate explorer, passionate about empowering others to embrace the divinity of their true selves, as well as the founder of Pneuma Health, whose mission is to restore and transform lives. Here's your host, Alan Wiederhold.
Welcome everyone to Pneuma. Today I am super honored to have with me, at least in my mind, a legend, Paul Karasik, who has, Paul, you have done so many incredible things. And I was thinking about this morning, in the year that I've had the opportunity to just get to know you. The conversations we've had have been legendary. They're super impactful to me. As an entrepreneur, as somebody who really kind of left the insurance world and came into the psychedelic space, you really opened your arms and just had this incredible conversation. So for me, this is truly exciting to be able to have this conversation. And to the listeners who may not know who Paul is, we're going to talk really briefly about his backstory, because I think what he does now, I would say, eclipses like the incredible conversation of what we typically have heard. So Paul has, I don't even know how to even begin this. And this is so crazy for me because I've never had a loss for words. But Paul and I were having a conversation around a book I was reading called The Tibetan Book of the Dead, and it was written by Timothy Leary. And Paul says, "Oh yeah, Tim, I met him at a corner and I bought an ounce of hash for him." So the history with Paul goes back to the Haight-Ashbury days and commune and Joshua Tree. And when I think about that, it reminds me of a commercial I saw a long time ago about the beatnik young generation who grew up and had traded in the Volkswagen, I think the Love Bug, and they traded in for a family truckster. And that was kind of you. You left all that. You went to New York. You became corporate. Now you're one of the most sought after corporate trainers. You've written 9 books. The last one that you wrote was just incredible, because I think it's so badly needed right now when we talk about getting high on leadership. And what is that even about? So I want to talk about, what is it? What is getting high on leadership? Why is it that leaders, because I was there myself, have such a hard time opening up with our employees and the people who really come into our world that support our visions? So, Paul, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. You know, it's funny you talk about that. First of all, what we talk about is consciousness, you and I. I mean, that's always what we talk about. And I don't find anything more fascinating than that. You know, that to me, it underpins everything in life, is consciousness and how it works and what's our relationship to it. And so that, I think you're in the same vein as I am. You know, and you find it fascinating too. And I think that's part of it, right?
Yeah, I think you and I, we were joking one time on one of our 2-hour just beautiful conversations about how we go to parties and how we struggle to have small talk. Because I really want to know, like, I want to know, like, what's going on in your soul. Like, for me, that's like, it comes across like I don't care about small talk. And it's not that I just don't find a place for it. To me, it's just not a comfortable conversation. because there's so much more I want to know. There's so much
Right.
more. Yeah. So, and I think you had said the same thing.
Yeah. Well, my daughter, I said to my daughter, I think she was 12. She said, "Daddy, I hate small talk." Or maybe she was 9 actually. She was so young, and I was just like, "Wow, we're in the same boat together." Um, yeah, you sent out an email to sign up for this particular podcast today, and it said Paul Karasik podcast, leading with compassion. And I thought to myself, because I've never said leading with compassion. It's nowhere on the book or in the book. It's adjacent, but not those exact words. And I thought you really summed up a lot of the book um, in just like 3 words. I was like, whoa, like I go, like when people say, what's the book about? And I always go like, well, the book's about how to bring consciousness into our everyday leadership, our interactions with other people, and how to lead in a collegial way rather than a command and control way, and how to lead, um, you know, with consciousness, right? I mean, conscious of the other person. And the other thing about the book, and leading and using leadership as our own yoga. And what I mean by that is like when stuff comes up with an employee, with your wife, with your kids, with in any situation, using that as a springboard for in looking inside, doing an internal inquisition. Why am I responding that way? Um, why am I responding with ego, with emotion, with detachment? I'm talking about pure observation right now. I'm
Hmm.
not talking about judgment and any of that stuff. I'm just saying pure observation.
And I think it's such a fascinating word to me, ego, because when we think of that word, immediately that's what you think. You think, oh, we have a story about it, but it really is the watching. It's the observation of the why am I responding that way? And I try to talk to my kids that way at
Mhm,
8 and 10 because the story is never the story. The story is always down the road. It's like 2 blocks over and one across.
mhm,
And it really is the sitting down and trying to understand why am I responding?
mhm,
What is it about the trigger
mhm,
that has me either riled up, or
mhm,
we can use that in any scenario. And
mhm,
I know just even yesterday for me, I woke up, it's Passover, it's Easter, my kids are running around looking for jelly beans and candy. And it was interesting because I love to send voice texts to people. So I said happy Easter. But the responses that I get back were, well, it's Passover for me, or he is risen, so the responses were kind of like what their stories were, their narratives. And for
mhm,
me, I was in
mhm,
the moment of Easter bunny and jelly beans and candy. It was neither religion nor science or anything, but people responded to me based on what their current story was.
Well, like the old saying is we don't see the world as it is. We see it the way we are. And I'm paraphrasing it, but
Mm.
we're always seeing it as a reflection. So they see Easter or they see Passover because that's what they are. But
Yeah.
yeah, and when stuff comes up, like to see it that way as an opportunity, and it comes up in business, so much that we really have a great opportunity to work on ourselves. When somebody doesn't get the work done up to the quality that we think they should have it, if people are lackadaisical, not caring, um, it's so easy to get off on a tantrum on it and just whack somebody, like, why are you getting this done? We got to get this done. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
smiling because you've been there as the CEO of a big insurance company. You know that it's what we get done that matters. And at a point, I don't give a crap. You had a bad night last night. We got to get this contract out. It's worth $100,000. I don't know. I don't want to know about that stuff.
But as I was reading your book too, it was comical to me on the inside because I saw so much of myself prior to that leading. And it was interesting that you found those three words, because when I read the book, that's what it was to me. It's just leading with compassion. It's just succinctly how we really should approach each other. And as I was reading it, I was thinking of a new hire that I had. I was so extremely excited about having this person and being able to bring her into the business. She had advertising experience. She didn't even have insurance experience, but for whatever reason, I just felt compelled. There was something about her that I loved, that I couldn't wait to bring her in, but I refused to train her. She was my assistant. She was my right hand. And rather than spending a few extra minutes a day grooming her, I took all the work from her. I just took it all on myself. Well, when you have hundreds of employees and you're a trainer, you have led some of the most successful CEOs, you know how hard that is to try to take all of their role and make it mine. And I did. I became very judgmental. I became very adversarial. And I remember she came into my office and she shut the door and she said, "What is your problem? You hired me to do a job, yet you won't spend any time teaching me how to do this job or to how to even relate to what is your satisfaction." And I remember at that time I thought, wow, how much courage did that really take to be able to come in here? Because you don't know if your boss is going to fire you.
Yeah. Wow, you're right. Wow.
Yeah. And from that moment on, I completely saw how I operated differently, because words matter.
Yeah, that consciousness. And,
Consciousness.
I think a lot of leaders, especially in these big family businesses, I know one of my clients is a baseball team, the executive leadership of the office staff at the executive level. And a lot of these teams, I don't know if you know this, but they're owned by very rich people. That's like their toy, and it's a big, ego, like they're all these really wealthy people that they don't really even make money on it. I mean, a lot of them, like owning a football team and stuff like that, but it's a big, big ego thing. I own the New York Jets or whatever.
Yeah.
So this guy owns a baseball team and the stadium and that whole thing. And he's outrageous. He, yelling at people and, just like outrageous. I mean, inappropriate, flying, yelling and abrasive and it's like becomes an arena for them to work out their emotional problems. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's just like, and I don't even say workout's not the right word to just, I don't know what the word is, but just to I see that a lot in these smaller, in big corporations, you can't get away with it. So
right.
But in like insurance companies, smaller insurance companies, those type of things, broker dealers, which you're very familiar with, a lot of them are just small business owners.
Yeah.
They started that way. A lot of them, it's like their arena to come in and work out their emotional neurosis on people. It's like, you know what I'm saying?
I do, because I think some of it is, I struggle with this too. It was the feeling of, and I don't like using the words anymore today, imposter syndrome. They're going to find out eventually that I am really full of crap because I don't really know what what everyone thinks I know, or I pretend to know more than I do. I built this thing, but it's really duct tape because I have lack of processes. I control everything myself. And I was reading another book just after I finished this one. And it was talking about teamwork, and it talks about the life cycle of employees. And what I found fascinating about that is that if you think about employees, there's the development. So you hire somebody to come in, and you should develop them. And when you do, then you're transitioning them into another role, and then they're aligned. Eventually, they're going to do that role for a while, then they're going to want more. Because they're coming in to grow, like they're coming into to be part of an organization, to be part of a vision, and then that cycle goes. So they're aligned with you again. They love you. They love the company, and then we go into the development phase again. And they're learning a new project, new skill, new thing, and then we transition them either up or out. So if they're not willing to be developed, then they get forced out. But that circle continues, and I think where we as business owners and when we stop developing, when we stop really trying to find people who want to be aligned, and we come in and we scream at them every day, and we have our own, for lack of a better word, ego trip, because we are so full of ourselves, mostly out of fear, insecurity, or even lack of consciousness or compassion. I feel like that's where most leaders get into trouble, because they're not even sensitive to their own hearts and their own consciousness.
Yeah, self-awareness.
Self-awareness.
And that was a lot of the book, wasn't it?
Yeah, was self-awareness.
I think, and then how to lead with compassion. Yeah, it's rampant, and I heard something in a book once, and they said, something like, don't work out your emotional issues at work, and that's what a lot of leaders do. And they become these tyrants and, very bossy, and people don't want to work for them.
Yeah.
People don't want to stay. And so it's much more lucrative to be compassionate. When you keep people, I think, the figure, it's like, I think 500,000 to replace a middle level executive. Like, it's much cheaper to just keep that person than to giving them another month of vacation every year. It's cheaper to give them the raise. It's cheaper if they're doing a good job. Anything's cheaper than letting them go and having them unhappy and having turnover.
It's I heard a story from a friend of mine who also, he works in the financial side of business, and he was telling me that so many times we want to give our people money only when they want to leave. Like, we never ask them, like, what is it that you want? But the second that they go find another job and they come in to, they come in to tell you, hey, I just found this other, I wasn't looking. It's always, I wasn't looking.
Yeah, that's such a good point.
Yeah, and what he said to me is that employees never just quit. They've always left 6 months before. You're just the last to know about it.
Yeah.
So, and they're disengaged because you're showing up without consciousness. You're yelling at them. You're screaming. And then he was telling me about a leader that I think was one of the coolest stories I'd ever heard. He had a middle manager who couldn't get to work on time. And rather than berating this individual and finding out what was going on, he found out that he was taking care of some elderly parents, and he was trying to take all of this enormous stuff on that had some problems mentally, just showing up and being focused on what the job was. And he approached this middle manager and he asked him what was going on. And he finally, took some courage and told him what it was. And he says, right now, I need an extra car. They bought him an extra car to be able to give. And it was a lease that the company had to be able to get this middle manager to be able to get his family to the things that they needed to. But rather than this guy having to leave or his productivity fall off, or he became a fan for life. You think a guy like that is ever going to leave? And he was a really good middle manager. He was incredible. Just experienced a temporary low point because of some outside stressor.
Yeah. Yeah. it's smart, but most, and it goes back to something I said in the first chapter, which is people don't own the role of leader. That's where it all begins. They don't see the gravity and the influence. Can you remember your boss from your first job?
Oh, 100%.
And you were 15, probably, or
Yeah.
16, maybe.
And I think about that all the time. Her name was Patty Ramirez. It was the merry-go-round. Yeah.
And so, like, I remember my first boss. I was 15, and I worked in a penny arcade in in a resort area upstate New York in Monticello. And so it had a lot of entertainment stuff and all the hotels and all this other stuff. And in town, there was an arcade, a penny arcade, if you remember that, with pinball
Mhm.
machines and, before video games, it was all physical baseball games and stuff like that. And I got my first job with him, and it was cleaning the machines and giving out the coupons when people won, a certain score, and then they get prizes for that. And, he said things to me that to this day, that was over 50 years ago,
Wow.
like to this day, guide me. He said, I never ask you to do what I don't do. And I thought, wow. He says, if I ask you to clean the floors and, mop, of course I mop and I've mopped and, and I thought that was such wisdom, that now you can't always do that as a boss, but in an entrepreneurial situation, a lot of times you can, especially, and like people like
Yeah.
yourself, I've done the packing and the shipping. I know what, you know what I mean? Like whatever, I've swept the floors, like, uh, there was some wisdom in his approach, and he was kind. He was a good person. He gave people a shot, and he had boundaries where it was that's the rule, and you can't break it. And you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, 100%. I remember as I was learning before we started our company, I remember leading that way with fear. And I had a claims manager who actually said to me, Alan, they want to love you, and you will get far more from them if you approach them with love than you ever will fear. And I remember how profound that was. And I think I was like in my 20s. And, when we started the company and as we wore all the hats because we did, I used to introduce myself as the head janitor, even with 100 employees. I was the head janitor. So, um, being able to wear those hats and be able to have that same kind of a thought process. There were times I'd stay till midnight getting a presentation together with my team, just
yeah.
crafting it so
Oh
that they would,
yeah.
yeah.
When I had my first company, we had a seminar company, and we did stuff nationally. My staff, we'd work all night back in the old brochure days when you had seminar brochures, and we'd be writing and rewriting, and back then there was no computers even, so you'd paste it up. You had to,
Yeah.
but we'd have that paste up ready for the printer in the morning, and we literally work all night. Like I, because we were all involved. It was exciting. They were part of something. And what you mentioned before is critical too, Alan, that the idea that people are growing, and that they grow out of things and they want to grow. It's the natural state of the human condition, seeking to grow, seeking the sun. The tree always looks for the sun. The flower always looks for the sun to face to, it wants to grow, and that's very appealing. You mentioned the money. This, every study done on why people quit, it's never about the money. It's money comes in third and fourth and like way down there, fifth in every management study that's ever been done over the last 50 years, maybe last 100 years for all I know. So, and that's what all the main thing. I used to run leadership retreats for big companies in Chicago, and the top top leaders, executives would come to that. And we used to have a comp night. And the first night of this forum, it's called Leadership Forum, was we would do comp, and I would take a whiteboard and everybody would share their comp with each other. So competitors would know what they were paying. Everybody became aware. So it was a real exciting, as a CEO, I'm sure you can appreciate that, like being in a room and like hearing it. And, somehow I created this legal environment where people were comfortable doing that. And that was so, base, commission, trail. What do you do? Base, what do you do with that? Like all this other stuff. But how much of the conference, that this forum, was spent on how do we treat our people better? How do we bring them in? How do we create? We did spend a little bit of time, but not enough on how do we create glide paths for them to come in at this and grow to that and get on that and go there, and then somebody's, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Right. Like,
yeah, because I as you're saying it, I'm thinking, as humans, we all want the same thing. And it was so crazy that you had actually said about how the trees and the flowers, they want the sun, like they gravitate. Because I was sitting outside on my deck yesterday and I was watching like trees just kind of swaying in the breeze. I was just remarking about how beautiful the branches are up, but if you were to go underneath the ground, they're the exact same branches. They're all there. And it's, as humans, it's because we all want the same things. We all want to be seen. We all want to be heard, and we all want to feel like we belong. I mean, at the end of the day, that's all we want.
Yeah. Yeah. That it doesn't change when you go into the business world. That's where so much stress comes from people, is they have to be a different person when they go into their job, and lose their own self, and speak in a certain way and act in a certain. And I'm not saying that we do that naturally. We speak differently to our kids than we do to our best friend or the guys when we're on the basketball court. We use different language. I'm not talking about that, but I'm saying we almost have to be a different person.
True to self.
And abandon yourself. And that's where stress comes from. Because you're always on edge. You're always, you're never authentic. It creates conflict and separation and division within yourself. And people think, the better we can make that continuum where people can be who they are in the business realm, in the whatever the leadership, doesn't have to be in business, whatever you're leading, if they, in that group setting, if they can just be themselves, they'll love you, like they'll be loyal,
I'm thinking, I used to bring in salespeople. Like I would have them, like they would want to meet the boss. So I would have my chief revenue officer. They would do all the screening processes, and I would bring people in, and I would share the vision for the company, and it would always got them like super excited. But I remember walking around in the conference room, because I don't like to sit. I love to walk and talk, and I remember like just sharing how we got to where we were and where we were going to go, and just the genuine excitement of being able to do that. And then hearing them get excited. And then when they come, realizing that I didn't invest that much time and energy into the executives underneath of me because they couldn't communicate the same excitement that I did every day. So it was really awesome when they came in, but when they came in, they didn't get the same level of excitement because I didn't spend that much time with the middle managers or the leaders that needed to really be kind of the front facing. I feel like that's most leaders. I feel like for entrepreneurs, CEOs, whatever, I feel like we have this vision of why we created the company. And then we grew, and then I think to some degree we forgot like why we created it,
Mhm.
and forgot to share that with everybody underneath of us, which is why I think a lot of that stress comes, is that not everyone's aligned with what the vision is.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're nailing it. And getting alignment on that and getting the key people as enthusiastic as you, because you didn't work on it. And that for those who are watching this podcast and are in those kind of settings, because not everybody is, in a small company, there's no layers. It's you and five people. I'm sure you have that with your new company. Basically, it's not like there's levels of middle
Yeah.
managers. The old thing, like I'm the sales and then you take another hat. I'm the legal department.
I'm the
I'm
head janitor.
you put different hats on. I'm the janitor. Yeah, I do the vacuuming at the end of the day here. And uh, but in a corporate setting, the need to really have your executive team on board, and frankly, and I don't know, your audience is pretty broad on that, but we're working with psychedelics and executive teams, and in fact, I've got two of them scheduled for in the next month or so.
And I wanted to get into that because I heard a story that was probably one of the coolest stories I've ever heard. So uh, there was a woman who was part of a big investment family. Actually, she had managed several family trusts. I think she had like four or five, and she had gone and done Aya. And for those listeners who may not know ayahuasca, so she went and did an ayahuasca journey, and Aya told her that she needed to vest herself of all of the family trusts that she was part of, and that she was going to focus on one, and she was going to go and approach the owner of this family's trust and say, I'm divesting of all of the others. I only want to partner with you, but we have to do ayahuasca together in order to do that. And she did, and she did divest of all of them. She did go to the woman that owned the family trust, who I believe was Indian, still lived in India, and they approached. They did Aya together, and they have gone on and they have created incredible. They've grown this trust like 125, 130%. But every company that they bring into the family trust, they have to do ayahuasca together. They
Wow,
even know that they're aligned.
wow,
And I can't even think of anything more magical than that.
yeah,
And I think you and I had talked about this in one of our conversations about being connected to each other, not just in business, but in life.
yeah,
Because if I have no ego and you have no ego and we are aligned, what more magic could we create together?
mhm, yeah, yeah. I think that it it may be a trend for the future. To get the executive team together, to get the leaders of whatever your company is, and just be with each other and get get that. I had a teacher years ago who said that the secret to relationships is like two bulls that have rings in their nose, and there's a chain between the two bulls, and as long as the two bulls are walking in the same direction, there's never any pain or suffering. But it's when they go in different directions. So when their vision is aligned to the same thing, and when you can do that with psychedelics and get that alignment vision on the same thing, because ultimately, isn't it true that like all this stuff we do with business is irrelevant? I mean, isn't it
Definitely
true?
irrelevant.
I mean, it's totally irrelevant. Whether Numa becomes a multi-billion-dollar company, or Psychedelic Institute, or my book sells 1 million copies, or it's so irrelevant in the light of what the truth of is, what the truth of our being is, what the truth of who we are is. It's like nothing. It's so insignificant. It's not even. It has no significance except for one thing. If it becomes a vehicle for us to work on ourselves, if it becomes a vehicle for me, I want you to be a sponsor. You don't want to be a sponsor. Okay, well, screw you. No, no. Either I was real with Alan,
Yeah.
either we had real valid connection, which is not dependent on you taking a sponsorship at our event coming up in October. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with you're me and I'm you. And if it's not good for you to do a sponsorship, then it's not good for me to do the spot. It's not, you understand what I'm saying?
100%. So I was meditating this morning, and this is so like I'm always amazed because I was meditating this morning, and my mind temporarily had to stop. I said, in my in my consciousness, you're focusing too much on the having and doing because it's Monday. Can you just slow down? And I did. And it got me clear because I was so excited to have this conversation with you today, but I was so focused on the Monday, here are all the things I have to get done. I started this new challenge today that it's called Business 75 Hard. So 75 Hard, for people who don't know, it's like you work out twice a day, morning and night, 3 hour separation, gallon of water, clean diet, no alcohol, read 10 pages. There's all this like external physical stuff. And I did that. I did that for 75 days. And the thing with 75 hard is if you miss a day, you have to start back at day one. So you could be like, yeah. So, and I did it the whole way through. Like I finished a month ago and I was so proud of myself. But that's just external stuff. Super easy. So I decided I was going to really focus more on the internal side now. So one workout a day, drinking a gallon of water, but then the rest of it was journaling and writing and creating and getting in touch with the inside stuff. And to me, that was a lot harder because there's a lot of things in the morning that we just like. Yeah. So when you said that, I was like, wow, this is exactly what came up for me this morning. Thanks for listening to this episode of Pneuma, the crossroad of science and enlightenment. We hope you're enjoying the deep dive into psychedelics, neuroplasticity, and the path to transformation. Before we continue, let's discuss recovery. After powerful experiences, your mind deserves more than just rest. It needs real support. That's where Pneuma Hydrate comes in. Formulated with GABA, taurine, inositol, magnesium, and more, Pneuma Hydrate is designed to help your brain recover faster and support neuroplasticity, giving you the clarity and the energy to fully embrace your journey. Fuel your recovery and elevate your mind with Pneuma Hydrate. Check out pneuma.health to learn more. Now, enjoy the rest of the episode.
Yeah, it's so much harder. It's so much harder. It's so much easier to defer to doing and not being. And to be the same person we are on a psychedelic experience as we are at work, that would be something.
You had mentioned, because you had mentioned to me that there was somebody that you were working with or you were going to work with, and then you were saying, you know what, I think I want to go into an experience with this individual because he talks sometimes a lot. And in the experience, I was like, you know what, this isn't going to work for us. Like we're not aligned. We're not going to be able to work together. So so I think
that's true. Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, I remember. I remember that story.
So I think there's some validity with that because you are more aligned, free of ego, because you're not worried about how do I have to look to you. Do I say no to your event, or do I just be honest with you because it's best for me? And where I see that show up a lot too is for people who are looking for jobs. They're out there, and right now it's tough. They're out there and they're applying for everything, and they may take a job that maybe they're not super excited about, but that was somebody else's dream job. Like, so, we settle in our minds for things because we feel like we just have to. Well, it is what it is, but we rob ourselves of the joy of something greater down the road by settling for something now.
Well, it's that thing about when something falls through we get so upset, and sometimes it's a blessing in disguise. The
Right.
perfection of the universe, to accept just right now that the universe is perfect and everything we need is here and everything we ever wanted is here. And so that takes the pressure off when somebody disappoints us. And like, to be in that state, which I see you nodding your head going, yes, that's true. Yes, that's true. Like, to be in that state when the upset comes, when the disappointment comes. But it's always from lower consciousness. That's where we screw up as leaders. It's always ego based. I'm not going to get what I want, or I'm going to lose what I have. It's never anything different than that when we become a bad leader, an unconscious leader. That, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. I'm thinking of somebody who works for the federal government right now. And as you're saying this, he had a dream to start a business.
mhm,
And the federal government is doing all these massive layoffs, and he's at NIH, and he's like, oh, well, the sky is falling, gonna lose my job. I'm like, well, maybe you're supposed to. Maybe that's the idea, that you have been talking about creating this thing that could hire more people, that could be more aligned with with where you want to go, not with where you currently are in this low vibrational state.
yeah,
So how
yeah.
does someone get to that point?
I think it's by awareness. It's this been my experience too. When the stuff comes up, so much of these reactions are wired in. And you're a sales guy, I'm a sales guy. It's part of our wiring to we want to win. That's the bottom line. We want to win the sale, we want to win the success. And when we think we're not gonna, then we get upset. And when we think somebody's sabotaging us, or screwing us or whatever, we get upset. And to observe that from pure observation has been my experience of how to get out of that. In other words, it's not so much about a doing, because the doing is the problem. So it's got to be about the being. But the being has to be non-judgmental. It has to be pure. Because if you're judging, you're part of the problem. You have to be at a point where you're observing the judge and the judgment at a higher level. Um,
So so as you're saying this, I'm almost thinking. So you're right. We're both salespeople, but maybe there are opportunities that we shouldn't even be looking at. So I always joke with people when I talk about salespeople. Every opportunity is an A opportunity, even though we know deep down inside they're really not. Like, we will sell garbage if we have to feed our family, but maybe
mhm,
if we just aligned ourselves, like we were kind of talking about with psychedelics, if we were to just align ourselves with the opportunities that we really wanted, that were best for the company, that were best for me personally, best
mhm,
for the proposal, one, how much more fun would it be
mhm,
to be able to focus and win those?
mhm,
But how much more fun would it be that we don't have the stresses of the companies we didn't really want in the first place?
right.
And I think a lot of times as entrepreneurs, because we are not operating from consciousness, we're going to run after every opportunity of things that we should never have
Right.
looked at in the beginning.
And run at it with a kind of desperateness that pushes it away. Nobody wants to buy from a desperate salesperson. You know, People want to buy from happy salespeople.
And you can almost smell the desperation.
You smell
Um,
it. Yeah,
yeah.
it comes out in the sweat,
Yep.
and you smell it. And you're absolutely right. It's so counterproductive. But so you observe it. You see it. The deal fell through. Observe it. Observe what's going on in you. And for me, things like that, I've gotten over them. I have to share that. I mean, I've gotten over it where I can do that. When somebody says, "Oh, you that fell through. You wanted that deal or whatever it was, or that relationship. And now I'm because I've done this for a while and I've worked on it. It's more of like, all right, more like, and less of a like, shoot, we wanted that. That was the perfect, that relationship would have been a great, partnership and blah, blah, blah. It's much easier now. I have to say, I have to give myself credit. But it's not easy because I was saying we're wired in to win. And you're putting all this effort into win. And it's that emotion that's making you a winner. That's what I find, training top executives and working with these high powered people. That's their positive, is that they have a passion to achieve whatever it is. And that becomes electric, and it becomes charisma, and it becomes attractive to other people to want to be around it. So now that same emotion, when the things go bad, of course, in other words, your good side is always your bad side, right? You're positive. If you're, you're a good communicator. I'm a good communicator, but people like this in the sales world, it becomes a negative. Like one of my mentors said, you talk yourself right out of the sale. I used to do that. Like I'd get it and then I'd keep going, so our positive would become our negative.
Yeah.
And it's the same in this situation. That sensitivity, that emotional commitment now becomes more challenging when we lose. Because we had, I love fights. I love boxing, not fights with people, but the sport of boxing. I grew up around it. I've been friends with some champions and really love it. And I was watching some of the old Ali fights the other night, and with Ken Norton. And even if you don't like boxing, I think there's a lot to learn from watching Muhammad Ali, one of my heroes. And at the end of the fight, he lost to Muhammad Ali. He was sitting in the corner and he was crying. And he didn't want to talk to any reporters. This is one of the most profound and powerful gladiators that's ever walked the planet Earth. And he's sitting on a stool and he's crying.
Mm.
And he didn't want to talk to anybody. And that says it all. That says it all. And so I don't know if we could ever overcome that. If you're a winner like you are, and I know you are, you've done it. It's not me. I'm not talking personality. I'm talking what you've achieved in your life. It's with a passion, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
It's driving the whole thing. Psychedelic Institute, writing the book, Getting High on Leadership. It's a passion. It's, you don't count the hours because it's a passion. And then when you lose, you gotta be able to really see that and observe that and go like, okay, so here's the secret. Don't get high and don't get crazy when things go good. And then don't get, look at it with a dispassionate kind of observation. That's, hey, cool. Like my assistant who really well, Brie, will go, hey, Paul, good news, blah, blah, blah. And I go, great. Hey, Paul, guess what? We we can't do that. All right.
Great.
All right, great. Yeah. And, it's like that Zen koan. I'm sure you're familiar with it.
Yes.
They go to the Zen master. He goes like, you lost all your stuff. And he goes, and so I forget the line, but he had this one line. And then, somebody just brought it all back. And so, my mother had an expression, all right, as long as you keep him busy. I'd say, Ma, I just got a book contract with McGraw-Hill. And you're like, all right, as long as you keep him busy. I always say, like, Ma, I had a deal with AT&T. They wanted me to do 20 speeches at 20 locations. All right, as long as you keep, whatever it was, all right, as long as you keep him busy. That was her expression. And there's a lot of wisdom in that. She always told me, I sleep good at night. I think that's part of it. As long as you keep them busy, that
Yeah.
kind of like that middle ground of observing it and let that character really want it. Let the Alan really want to win and have $1 billion hydration card. No diminishment of that. Let Paul become a, whatever, great author, whatever. Like, fine, that's fine. But not to be attached to it. That's our being, and so many years, you and I both, we lived, that's who we were. There was no separation between what we did and who we are. So when something got damaged on what we did, it damaged who we were. And then we got emotional. And then, of course, then we screwed everything up. Talking to people that we shouldn't, in a tone, right?
Yeah. I mean, the whole foundation of the company for me, and even being successful in sales, was making up for lots of things that had been going on in my life since I was a child. So I think that a lot of times when you look at a successful person, we can bring IFS or whatever you want into it, but there's a protector syndrome. And for me, I remember being in sales. I used to sell stuff door to door. Like, I would sell like seeds and comic books, and like back in our early days, like you could knock door to
I
door.
did the seeds, I did the greeting cards.
I sold everything. Like, and I remember if we had a submarine sale at school, I worked the phone book like nobody's business. Like, I had to win, but it was because I had no worth. And it really took me until a few years ago to really even understand what that was. And my need for success was because I needed validation. I needed validation that some things had happened to me earlier in my childhood that I had to prove to myself that I was worth something. And now to be able to work and to be able to create out of pure passion, because I've learned to, just as you're saying, just, it's all good, bad. Those are just words at this point. And now we just move forward on purpose.
Well, take that emotional. I find, having worked with so many top executives, the top sales executives in particular, they all have the same history as you and I. Traumatic type upbringings, fathers who weren't there, family situations that were very conflicted. I can't think of many that weren't, although some appear like they weren't. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
patch up, like,
Yeah.
tape and, glue. But underneath there was something really fucked up. Excuse my French.
Yeah.
Very messed up. And they're working it out. But that's what I'm saying. That line, don't work out your emotional problems at work. Don't. But we did in a positive way as salespeople. Same for me. I was the same way. Let me show them somebody by getting out there and making my way in the world, and achieving success. And now I'm worth something. And that's the story. And to be number one, I mean, I see guys when I work with teams, they fight furiously to be number one, and it doesn't mean it. And like, there's a little trophy or some nothing, like, or an extra $1,000. It doesn't mean anything to these guys. They'll fight. They will fight. They'll be on the phone, like, like, what it is. It's just like,
I have boxes of those trophies that are somewhere that I don't even, my wife and I we were cleaning out the basement, and I found a box, and there are literally dozens of number one trophies that are in a box that don't even really mean anything. And when I was going through some of them, they were some of my darkest, most unhappiest times of my life, but I won. Literally won. I won.
I won. Yeah. I won the $12 trophy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it was cool. I would win trips. I'd win the best salesman trips, and those were cool.
Yeah.
when I was
No,
working.
I always love the trips, and then you get this recognition. And I remember standing on the stage to get the recognition, and I never felt I was, yeah, hey, it was all ego. But then I knew that I'd be back there to win for next year. Like, I mean, I wasn't even able to enjoy the trip because I'm already thinking about
Yeah,
winning. Yeah, you're right, though. It becomes your identity.
yeah, it's your whole identity, and that's what I'm saying. To get out of that, it takes such commitment. You talk about hard work, externally, and then how do we translate? It's not work per se, but it's just commitment. It's commitment to getting better. It's commitment to saying, I don't want to live this way anymore. Before you do your first ayahuasca ceremony, somebody said, why are you going to, why I was going to Costa Rica? And it's like, I don't want to live this way anymore. I don't want to live this way, the way we're talking right now,
Yeah.
where everything we're doing is based on some neurotic drive to be somebody, that message we got since we were children, like you got to be something, you got to do something with your life. You're God. What do you have to do? You're the divine, you're everything. You're the beginning and the end, the Alpha and the Omega. You are it. What do you have to do to be? Like, it's such a lie, right? The truth, because the truth is you are that. You are the divine. You are connected. You are universal intelligence. You are that. There's not a debate on that.
You are the creator.
You are the creator. So now
Yeah.
you're switching to a lie. You're saying, I have to be somebody to be somebody. I have to do something to be somebody. That's a lie. That's not true. You're it. So back to what you were saying was, how do you get over that? It's by constant vigilance. And most people don't want to do that.
No, it's hard.
It's hard. I mean, it's got to be from the minute you get up in the morning till when you go to sleep. It's got to be every time something upsets you, to really be able to step back and every disappointment, step back and observe it and not judge it, not say, oh, you're not getting there, you're not doing a great job with observation. Like, observe the judgment of your judging, like, because that self is always there at that level to observe. I think, and we've talked about this, the big fallacy of meditation. Meditation, if it is usually the observer and the observed, but the observer and the observed are the same thing. And it's only through your wisdom right now that you see that from the place of the higher self, that what I said was true. So meditation is a masturbatory process of yourself with yourself. When you see that, now you're free. Now you're free. And some people get to that higher mind through the meditation, but as a side effect of the meditation, it happens, but it didn't happen during the meditation, because the meditation is still an effort to control. And if you're controlling, you're part of the problem. Just that instead of controlling employees and controlling, effects on the external world, you're controlling your mind, saying, I'm gonna hammer those thoughts down. I'm gonna stop them. I'm gonna, those.
As you're saying that, I'm thinking of so many of these meditation apps who are like, okay, go back to the breath. If your mind is running away, go back to the breath. I'm like, well, let it run. Like,
Exactly. It's gonna always run until you observe it.
yeah.
It's always going to run, and just observing it is the way to get over it, because when you push something down, it's going to pop up somewhere else. And when you suppress, I'm talking about,
Yeah.
so, and a lot of times that's part of suppression too. You're hammering on the thought process, on the mind that's creating these thoughts, as opposed to just observing. But you have to get into that observational space where we can be with it.
I
And
almost think it's the difference between mindless and mindful. So because I I feel like for me back in the day before I knew anything about mindfulness and observing the observer, I didn't even want to have anything to do with my emotions. I didn't want to have anything to do with understanding or
yeah,
observing what they were. Like no one ever talked to me like this. Or the way that we talk to our kids, and I always love how you have always talked to your kids because I talk to mine the same way because of the conversations you and I have had, and now being able to say things that I'd never heard growing up, and now being able to understand that I repressed all of those things down instead of writing them out or
mm-hmm.
trying to understand or learn,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to go back and look at those things that were written. So I always find that most emotions, if you really want to understand what they are, write them out. Like, so I love to go back and look at what I wrote yesterday or the day before. I'm like, well, that was kind of,
Yeah,
so that was like, yeah, I can see where you kind of went off the rails over there, Dad. So yeah.
yeah, that's a valuable thing. And thank you for sharing that. I think there's a lot of wisdom, and sometimes I have a tendency to discard all process uh, because I've spent my life in process. You've spent it in process. That's how you got to psychedelics,
Yep.
because it's just like Zen retreats and 10-day fasting and 5-day fasting and studying with this guru and studying with that guru and affirmations. Oh God, are they have nothing? If there was ever a nothing, prayer, work, all process, all man-made process, therefore all worthless. And so I tend to get very black and white, and which is never any good, and say, well, they're all bad, because they are, in a sense of, if you see that as the end goal, like the journaling,
Yeah.
if it's the thing, then no, yeah, it is bullshit.
Yep.
Yeah, but if the journaling is just part of just being able to observe your wired in kind of responses.
Yeah.
I was at a stoplight here in Los Angeles, and for some reason I was screwing out the phone. I lifted my foot off the brake, and I rolled into a car in the front. And it wasn't fast or anything, but it hit a.
Tapped it.
Yeah, now we're on Riverside Drive in here at Studio City, and there's people lining up in back of us, and like, he gets out of the car, and I'm like, hey, I just, like, I just, and he's like, I see a little scratch on the
Oh
thing.
my gosh.
Oh yeah, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And he's like, no, you broke my light. Now I may have, I don't even know if I did or I didn't, but I'm like, hey man, just like, can't we just roll with this? Like, I tapped you, this wasn't a fender bender, it was a fender toucher,
You're
like,
right.
I touched you. And then he said, well, you broke the back light. It was one of these chauffeur type things, TCP, where they bring,
Yeah.
like chauffeur, like a Ford Explorer or something like that. I don't know, something like that.
Wow.
And it had one of those lights. And I'm like, my response was to be the old Paul of like, how do I, and I said it, I actually said, I went like, hey, I don't know if that was broken before. Well, how do I know? Like, I just touched you. It wasn't like a big, like, bang, and now I broke your light. Like, and I just saw myself come at him like old Paul, alive and well. Just total, no break in between. I hit him, he gets out of the car, I get out of the car, and it's like, what are you talking? Like,
Yeah.
how do you know? Like, it shouldn't have been that. It shouldn't have been that. It shouldn't, if I was in pure awareness, I'd say like, hey, I don't know, here's my insurance. Like, let's, right? I
Yeah.
mean, like, maybe I'll dispute it, maybe I won't. I said, I don't know. He said, well, I'll take you to court. Right away, we're in court. Like, it
Wow.
escalates to, because I escalated, right?
Yeah.
And instead of just like observing this as an event, like right away I'm thinking, I don't have $500 to give this guy, I don't want to spend it. I haven't. I don't want to. I want to give it to my employee or
Yeah.
make new software. Like, I touched you, man. I didn't even, it was like a nothing thing. Like, why you make, but you see what I'm saying?
No, 100%, because I woke up yesterday morning, and for whatever reason, they say you wake up on the wrong side of the bed.
Yeah.
And I was just quiet. I don't know if it was because it was Passover, Easter bunny, kids, whatever. I just was like, I was just in an introspective mood.
Yeah.
We ended up going to church, and I was just, my wife's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine." Like, I literally, there was nothing bothering me, but I just like talking. So all day she's like, are you sure you're okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine." But instead of just like sitting down with myself and saying, "Are you fine?" Because clearly she doesn't think I'm fine. So
No.
I'm clearly giving a vibe.
Yeah, definitely.
And I woke up this morning and I'm like, yeah, I got to write that out. I don't know why I was like in an introspective mood, but maybe I wasn't fine. But I didn't even acknowledge that to myself. So the same
Yeah.
fender touching, my fender touched my wife, and I didn't even acknowledge that there was something wrong. So I escalated into introspective me, but in a reality to her, that's how I used to withdraw. I used to withdraw all the time.
Yeah.
And asking, what's going on? Like, why are you not communicating? Like, I'm fine. Like, I'm just like,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think it pops up in all of us.
Yeah. What could you would rather have just talked to her and said, "Hey, I
Yeah.
woke up weird today. I don't know if
Yeah.
I'm some sort of worry syndrome
And
or."
I really have, it was no worry. There was no stress. I just didn't feel like talking. So, yeah, but that was the vibe that I gave. So all day. So I'm like, "Do you want to go for a walk?" So we went for a walk last night with the dog, and I literally
Mhm.
was okay. Like, I just didn't feel like talking.
Yeah, and sometimes it just passes
Yeah.
and of its own accord. I can relate. I'm the same type.
Yeah.
Get very quiet. Are you okay? Yeah, fine, fine.
Yeah.
You know,
Fine.
fine. That answer, no problem. Um, as we become more observant, that stuff just falls away. It's really quantum physics. And, I'm not real scientific, but the idea that when somebody is present in a room, that the effects of whatever the experiment was changed without them becoming actively involved with the experiment. Right. I'm sure you're
Mm.
familiar with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was the basis of quantum physics, that the presence of somebody else observing changed the result of whatever the experiment was. Our observing of our own internal state without doing anything, pure observation, will change the outcome of those
Yeah.
responses to your wife, my response to the chauffeur driver, just by watching it. And maybe next time, I don't know. I can't guarantee on that one, but I just touched you, man. I did,
Yeah.
like, come on, like, let's let this thing roll. Like, you could
Yeah.
have been in a supermarket, somebody touched you, or even like let it go. Like why you get, why do you want to make this into a big thing? You know,
I
uh,
watched a woman, an elderly woman, back into my truck. Like, she hit it hard. I was at the you said grocery store, and this like
yeah,
just happened like a month ago. And I was walking out to my truck, and she like just smacked it hard.
exactly. Yeah,
And I don't know, she did some damage to her car because it was my wife's big F-150. Took a picture of her license plate, and there's all these people who are looking at me, and I'm watching her, and she literally just drove away. Like, I don't know if she realized that she hit me, but
oh
I took
wow.
a picture and I was like, I'm gonna call him. Like, what am I gonna do? She already left. Like,
Uh,
so I mean, she's gonna figure out that she hit me. So, but I kind of laughed about it.
did you
But
call her?
I never called her. I was like, if she's okay, she's gonna find out later she hit me. So, but I went to the effort of taking a picture of her license plate, and I
Did
never called.
was your car damaged?
No, I had a big truck. She had a small car. Her car was
Oh,
damaged.
right.
Her car was damaged. I'm like, do I call her? Nah, like, she's gonna figure out that she hit somebody.
Yeah,
So
some car. I was on Sepulveda Boulevard. I was coming home. I was really tired, and I had an emotional drain. And somebody sideswiped me, and they
Ah,
did, and but not hard. Just as we're going about 40 miles an hour, just kind of they were trying, and the boom, and I felt them, and I just went
eh,
like they were waiting for me to put the blinker on and signal them, and I just went, oh, I'm so tired. It's 1 a.m. I don't want to deal. I'd rather have it screwed up. And my car is, it's got a big scratch on the side.
oh,
But I thought maybe, we project our own thing like
yeah,
to the sky with the chauffeur. Like, why don't you be more like Paul and just like
yeah,
let it ride? Like, and plus it's like nothing, like type of thing. But it's the wired in patterns. It's the people around us. It's the wives. It's the kids. They're the biggest triggers, and
yeah,
to watch those triggers and observe those triggers, they lose their power. And whether it's at work or in our personal lives, it's the same triggers. They don't change. It's and yeah, it's that's what I'm trying to say in the book, Alan,
yeah,
that our work now becomes a vehicle of our own yoga. That our work now gives us these opportunities to observe the observer, observe the judger, the judge and the judgment, to become, get our own consciousness higher, right? That
yeah.
is our tool to grow. Like,
And to do that, we really have to remove the story or the ego.
yeah,
Yeah, and as you're saying that, I often find that at home, where it's almost where getting high on leadership is almost more required than
yeah,
it is, because what happens at home with wife, kids, dog, whatever, you so much of the time take that to work. And instead of separating the ego part of and just observing and then being, I think then you'll find alignment in both.
and yeah, you bring that into work. That's what I
Mm,
was saying. That
yeah.
it's both ways. We have to either be a different person, or we bring our personal life into work with all of its glory. Either way, you bring your personal life. It's just one is less stressful
Yeah.
and it's going to work better. When somebody walks into work and says, I'm not feeling great today, and you have the wherewithal to say, hey, why don't you just go to the park, and here's,
Yeah.
just relax, have a cup of tea, here's a Starbucks card, go and take a
Can
break.
you imagine what kind of a place that would be to work? I mean, that's the kind of place I dream of creating. And
Yeah,
that's how I did toward the tail end, toward the exit.
yeah,
But for the longest time, it was show up and do this instead of, are you not 100% today? Cool. Go walk. Go
yeah,
take a Starbucks gift card.
yeah. Wouldn't it be nice? I find a lot of it, and we talked about
Yeah.
this, and we're planning a retreat in, I think, May 31st in New York. Um, but I don't know if it's going to be the executive retreat that we talked about, but
Okay.
I'd still like to do that with you,
Yeah, definitely.
and because I find that with all my friends who are at the level that you're at, CEO type level or high level business entrepreneurs, um, and even corporate guys, but mostly entrepreneurs, frankly, now that I think about it, we all struggle with it because we all do the medicine, and we all know it's not it's not right that we respond that way,
Yeah.
or with lack of compassion, like you said, leading with compassion. It's not right, and we're challenged and we want to do better, but it's hard. And I think that that's, we need to talk about it and support each other in that. And it's not a quick fix at all. It's not da 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 da, and we treat our you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. And I love, because we talked about this before, and you're right. And I think to be an entrepreneur, be a businessman, woman, whatever, to walk, it's a very lonely road at times.
it is.
And I remember, like, my wife would want to go out with friends, and you're thinking about sales and payroll and insurance and all of these things. And it's like, I really don't want to go out with anybody tonight. Like, they don't understand like 95% of the things that I have going on a daily basis. But that's the time where you have to just let go, and to be able to put your hands or arms in another person's, say, here, hold space for me for a while,
Yeah.
for a day or a week. So I'm totally on board for this.
Creating that.
Yeah. A container.
Yeah, I think it's possible. I don't think it's impossible. I remember one company I worked with, software company. I went out to their place in Virginia, and I was amazed. People had their babies. It was a big house, and then offices in it. Or it was actually may have been an actual office complex, but not like a big building, just kind of a one level type thing. And they brought their babies in, and in a carrier where they could feed them, and there were dogs. People had their dogs like hanging out at their desks. There was an outdoor area just to chill. I thought it was pretty impressive, really. That just going that far
Yeah.
was really cool. But like part of it has to be the physical surroundings, I think, right? I mean, to accomplish what we're talking about, to make it more home-like. But then how do you get things done? You and I know you get things done by managing your time and being as most productive as you can every minute. And that's the polar opposite of what we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
Of laying back and being in the presence of, we have everything already, so why panic? One's max do, and the other is max be.
Yeah.
And
Well, I think what I found, because there was a point where I never allowed a meeting before 10 o'clock. And I never allowed a meeting after 4 o'clock, because I became so focused in on time. I knew that there were about 4 things at the very most that I had to get done during the day to propel the vision going forward. Like, there was never more than 4. What we call dominoes. Like, they're the 4 main dominoes that will make everything else fall. And I feel like most of the time we get into these loops of showing up and doing a lot of busy work without being focused on what are the 4 things, like, and then sitting down with your team and saying, what are the 4 things? What are your 4 things? Because if we truly all have the 3 or 4 things that we all know we have based on our roles,
Mhm.
then I think it could happen in that environment. I think that.
No, yeah, but I'm going beyond that. So
Oh yeah.
I agree with you on that. But I'm saying, what about the time? My question is, what about the time? Like, we're doing a trade show,
Yeah.
in a couple weeks, and it's going to be a big one, and we're going to bring a team of 4 people down there. And being a sales and marketing executive at my core, I go like, well, no matter what you do, you're only capable in a full, and we're investing a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
Tickets, booth, vendor, the whole thing. In the best case scenario, a person like you or me can have 10 or 15 conversations in a
Right.
day. That's it. Usually, if somebody's significant, it could be 8.
Yep.
If you had a gold, you hit a gold mine and you had 8 significant people to go deep with, that's 8 or 10 hours right there. An hour conversation. But let's say, right?
Yeah. Yep.
That's it. Now there's hundreds of people there to talk to that are relevant to talk to at this trade conference. Hundreds. 10. Hundreds. Guys, let's just make sure we get our 10 in, and not, talk to each other in the booth, talk to the next booth, like you know what I'm saying? Like,
Oh yeah. Anybody who's been to a trade show knows there's a lot of busyness.
it's you can waste your time,
Yeah.
but no, but we want to have every minute focused. Now somebody says, oh, I went to the after party last night and I don't know, I'm sort of out of it. And I'm the CEO. I'm like, the hell you doing going to an after
Yeah.
party? I told you we got to be top of the line. This is a 10-hour shift. Got to go home at night and get some rest and come back and fight the good fight here. We can only see 8 or 10 people. Did you get that? Now
Yeah.
you can only see 5 or 6 because you got brain fog and you need an hour to drink coffee and, and to get yourself together and like not respond. That you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like
So one, I see that a lot. I see that because there was a lack of the same passion. We all know how exciting it is for us. I always question, did I convey that passion to everybody else? If they found it more exciting to go the all night after party as opposed to furthering the mission, then maybe they're not as passionate about the mission. Which again, I think going back to having dogs and outdoor spaces and bringing your babies to work, I wonder if you can have that passion because you're seeing it. You're much more in the trenches of being part of a family as opposed to I'm just showing up for a seminar and I'm going to do my thing and then I'm going to go to the after party thing and then it becomes a job, not a career.
Right. I think that's part of it.
Okay.
And that, like I say in the book, the ultimate is to get people to care, but I would think of my daughter, and I already talked to her about it because she's going to be at the show. And I said, you can't, she loves to go out and dance and all that stuff, party, and I said, you can't do it at these shows, when they go multiple days, you can't be on your game. You just can't. There's no physical way to be on your game, but when you stay up till 2 a.m. and have to open up the booth at 8, it's not possible.
Yeah.
And then to react from that lower level of consciousness is so easy at that point. Like, hey, we invested in this thing, the booth, the tickets, the everything, we got to make, like, it's so easy to go bad on them rather than say, hey, she's 26. At 26, they go all night at a party and show up the next day. And you know what I'm saying? It's like,
yeah.
And so be a little more understanding, like
Compassionate.
More compassion. Like you said, more compassion. Let her work through the deal. Have a bad, be like, working with the little brain fog and like, the hangover thing, like let her figure it out. I did that the other night and I just went, oh, I don't want to do this again. Like stayed up late. We had a kind of a late night concert thing we were at. And then the next morning I was like, ooh, what a price to pay because I had to get up early.
I have an Italian Greyhound, a small dog.
Mm-hmm.
They were bred for rodents. That's why they were bred. We have this really cool red fox that basically lives in our house. So we feed this thing 3 times a day.
Wow! Oh, wow!
It's so cool. Like we could literally
that's so beautiful.
We've named him Swiper because he comes and he swipes food from the plate. We leave a plate outside, Paul. It's insane.
It's so great.
So we can now sit on the step and he'll actually come to the other side of the step and he'll get the food. And this has been going on. Like we're convinced like within another month, we'll be able to feed him by hand. Well, anyway, so my dog gets out the backslider. He sees Swiper. He runs around the front and he starts chasing the fox. Now I am screaming my fool head off, yelling for the dog to stop. And then at some point I dawned on me, I'm like, wait a minute. He's just doing what he was bred to do. I can't ask him to be anything more than what he is.
Yeah.
And I stopped and I came in and my entire house was looking at me like, because
Wow.
I was screaming, I was hoarse. And then I started laughing. I'm like, I'm yelling at Jasper for being Jasper.
Yeah.
But all
Yeah.
the time, we're doing the same thing to our employees.
Yeah.
We're yelling at them for
Yeah.
being who they are.
Yeah. That's right. That's a great point. And if you just understand them and then have compassion for them, the result is going to be completely different. And we often just think it's selfishness again. This is my company. We want to have a great trade show. You're going to be down 3 or 4 appointments today out of that. We can only do 8 or 10 to begin with, and you're and we'll live with it. We'll get through it. And maybe the one that you did make with was because you saw them at the dance last night at the after party, and it was 5 times what would on average what we're doing. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, 100%.
so to just pull back on that negative is a positive, but our selfishness jumps in. That's the thing. Our self-absorption of me just takes over, and the threat. That ego threat for survival is so misguided. That it becomes a psychological thing, and it was never meant to be that.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? It's like
100%.
it's
Yeah.
pure survival that you're going off on your daughter that she went to the after party. Like let her be the fox.
Yep.
Like that she is. Like that's what a beautiful 26-year-old young woman does.
All about the experience.
That's right. She's like, let it go. She doesn't want to go back and just chill out, the way you need to. So yeah, I think that these are the lessons that become a vehicle of our own leadership. Now becomes a form of yoga to keep showing it these opportunities that we can now learn to observe and get and start to transmute them because we're aware. The only the only hopeless state is lack of awareness. Then you're hopeless. Then you're hopeless.
Wow.
Right? Like to think to believe you're a victim is hopeless. You're hopeless. Yeah.
So, Paul, we've had 9 books. We have started so many things. You're part of so many things. And last year we launched The Awakening. We had last October. And we're getting ready for another awakening this year. Where do we go from here? I mean, again, I didn't want to get into any of your past because your future is so like your present and future are so amazing. So what does our future look like? What is the
growing Psychedelic Institute is near and dear to me. It's the educational arm that I'm developing to help leaders become better leaders, to help facilitators to become better facilitators, helping people bring professionalism into the business side of psychedelics. Those are all part of that Psychedelic Institute of Los Angeles vision. Awakening 2025, I hope everybody who's listening to the podcast will consider coming to that. It's going to be in Los Angeles, and we have 40 or 50 speakers come in. We may have more this year based on the fact that we'll have availability. We have 10 or 15 musical performers, all about psychedelics or psychedelic adjacent. We have sound healings and mushroom growing workshops and legal psychedelic experiences available, working with legal substances. A lot of fun, a lot of community, and people say it's unlike anything they've ever attended. I mean, and I've gotten that back so many times from people that the energy of support, collegiality, that collaborative kind of environment they have not seen at any other event. And I guess I want to take credit for it, but it's really not a credit thing. It's really about just laying the space for people, and then they create that environment. I could never do it by myself. So um, just to create create the space, like you say, space holding. But
One of the things I think I've always loved about you, and the things that you always hear so much of the seriousness of psychedelics. There's this healing. There's this,
yeah,
it's almost like this, I don't want to use the word tribalism, but
mm,
there's almost like these camps where it all has to be boring and healing. Well, what happens after you heal? You want to celebrate. And I
yeah,
feel like sometimes in psychedelics, we don't ever want to talk about the fun and the
yeah,
healing fun part of this, like the celebratory side.
yeah.
And to
That's
me,
right.
that's the awakening is you're
And
healed.
why do we
You
do it if not for that? What that's what
yeah.
the whole point of this thing. Yeah, well, that's what we believe, and we have our psychedelic celebrations. Come one, I don't know when this is going to air, but May 10th. I would love for you to come to that. That would be a great connective tissue. You know,
Perfect.
and I would drink a bunch of Numa if you came. So.
I will look at flights.
And that's a beautiful, beautiful day of celebration. You know, this word recreation is so misinterpreted. It's so wrong. Oh, you do psychedelics for recreation. The word recreation comes from the Greek word, and it meant to reconnect with the soul. That was the definition of the word rec. Think about recreation. Recreation was to recreate the
Create.
connection to the soul. That's what recreation was. And then it became sort of like stuff you do for fun. And then it became stuff you do for fun that really has no value. Oh, they do that just for recreation. He smokes pot for recreation. No, recreation is medical. They're smoking pot, not for recreation. They're recreating a connection to their soul.
Mm.
So we believe in that. And when you go to a psychiatrist, one of the things, or even for your 1 year's checkup, when I go for my physical, they do a little mental thing, especially when you get older. And one of the things I mean, I've seen it since I've ever done those tests is what do you do for recreation? Like, it's not like an, oh, by the way, for mental health. It's a critical element to have that you just don't work all day or you just don't do anything all day, that you do something for recreation.
Yeah.
And so we believe in that. And so our events are combination, one, going deep, getting connection with the soul, with the medicine, and then just having fun. And we have a lot of fun. You know, we have cacao ceremony, and we have music, live music, and we have tarot reader, and we have body work, and we have great conversation. The last event we even got up as we were dancing, and and people come up all the time, Alan. They'll go like, I go to these ceremonies and they're so serious, and
Yeah.
uh, you know, we're not the trauma release ceremony. We love them, and all of our people come to that, and they come to that do that work, come to awakening, and they're all there. But that's not our ceremony. Our ceremony is to celebrate ourselves, our lives, our connection to the divine. And when you're connected, you're having fun,
To
and fun,
recreate.
you recreate that fun element in life. I mean, that's why we started doing psychedelics to begin with, because we weren't having enough fun.
Yeah.
If we were having fun, we never would even eaten a psychedelic. And so it's like, I call it real-time integration, where you're on the substance and you're integrating it now into a conversation with another person. And so you're speaking more gently, you're more sensitive, you're listening better, you're collaborating with them. They're a musician, oh, let's play some music together. You're integrating the experience in real time, right?
Yeah.
That's what recreational is. It's real. It's actually integration at its highest level. And so we start our ceremonies in the afternoon because then we can have more fun. And, we're not doing the big trauma release and which is great work. And sometimes, we do ceremonies and they need somebody to talk to, or that happens, it comes up, but that's not the intention.
Yeah. I remember I was at a ceremony and I was in the car and as you're saying, it's like, I remember when it hit me, I was like, I cannot say that I'm a trauma survivor anymore. That I'm a thriver. Like to say that I'm a survivor will continually put me in that container.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
as you're saying this, it's like, yeah, like we should be celebrating the moments of healing and celebrating the awakening. We've done this in every culture throughout the entire age. There's always been a celebration, whether that be agriculture, whether that be religious, whether that be whatever. There was always a celebration. Always.
Always. It's always part of a ceremony and involved with that. But yeah, I mean, you make me think of the Jewish traditions.
Yeah, that's how I was thinking the same thing.
In my own day, I'm not that I'm practicing anything, but you always drank wine.
Yeah.
I wonder why the wine's that. I always would think, like, why wine? Like why wine? Like wine because it's celebratory.
Yeah.
That's why wine. Because
it was the grape that came from the earth.
Yeah, well, yeah, and there's a lot of connective tissue, but I'm going to look at it without any context and say, you're drinking friggin' wine. That's like smoking a joint. Like, that's a part of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like to drink wine and get a buzz. Like, let's talk real now. You drink wine, you get a buzz. Like, why are you getting a buzz? Because you want to celebrate. You want to go like, now, okay, after the service, we go and drink the wine. That's what I grew up in. And now it's a little looser and, hey, your uncle's here and da 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 da. And there's some, honey cake. Did you have some cake? And, now it's celebration. It's
always a celebration. It always has to go back to the celebration or you would just be stuck.
We do our celebrations in Chatsworth. It's a real big house and other people use the house besides our tribe kind of. And so one of my partners up there, business partners, I said, you see a lot of, this is last month after our last ceremony. And I said, how do we compare? Because I go to a lot of things, but he's really seen a lot, right? There's different people bringing their groups and I go, how do we compare? And he said, you make it fun. Like, I'm so sick of these working through trauma nights and people with heavy addictions, going through, stuff and, the crying and like all, he goes like, yours is just pure celebration and it's so refreshing. And we've heard that again and again from people. And so I think we have our little niche with it. And I'm not downing any of that stuff. It's so critical. I did it. I did ceremonies where I was crying for 6 hours and, you have too. But like, it's time to let the story go and let's just let it,
That's one of the things I've always found fascinating with Alcoholics Anonymous is that forever you'll say, I'm an alcoholic.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, you're not like you were.
Yeah, I know. That's part of, and that's because I think that's part of that cult thing.
Yeah.
And they want to keep you involved and that keeps you involved. And I 30 years in AA.
I'm a thriver, not a survivor.
Yeah. And 30 years till I finally got to say, I'm not that guy.
Yeah.
And, I don't want to say I'm that guy. I don't even want it to come out of my mouth.
No.
I know I haven't had a drink in probably, I guess, 30, 35 years or something. But the truth, Alan, I could take a drink today and I wouldn't drink alcoholically. Like they say, it's not true. I just have no desire and I don't want to prove it. But I know that for a fact. I know it, that what they're saying is not true. That once you're an alcoholic, you're always an alcoholic. That you can break that syndrome. I don't have any desire to drink alcohol at all. I'm not drinking alcohol. It's like eating a hamburger. I'm a vegan. If you put it in front of me, you could leave it there all day.
Yeah.
And if I had to, I could eat a bite of it, but I'm not going to start eating that every day because I ate a bite of it.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? It's not going to
100%.
anything. I would just say, hey, I'm going to eat this hamburger because right now I feel like it's what I got to do. But the next day, I'm not going to be eating hamburgers I could get back. It's not going to happen with alcohol either. I know that.
Yeah.
But they want to keep you in your story. That's how you stay.
Correct.
That's how you keep coming back. Keep on coming back. That's their line. Keep coming back.
It's almost like there's almost two schools of thought on this. So Freud told you to always go back to your childhood, your trauma, your focus on all those things.
Mm-hmm.
And then Adler wanted you to look at it, accept it, acknowledge it, take responsibility, and move forward, but never stuck in the past. So it's kind of an interesting two schools of thought. And I feel like right now we're so focused on let's go back, focus on all of these, because it took me years to be able to but it's, again, until November, still stuck in that I'm a trauma survivor. I'm not. Like,
no.
I'm not.
It's time to let it go.
Yeah.
Some people just that's the sick thing about AA. Yeah, it's just a constant focus on that, and I have some radical views on that. I don't think we ever heal it.
No.
I don't think we ever do. It's like a broken thing. You can fix it, you can glue it, but it's going to always be a broken thing. It's just a fixed broken thing that can now function, and the toy works. But you never, ever, ever. It's done. It's done. It's like a scar. I've got a knife scar on my arm. Somebody hit. It's always there. It's like, it's always there. It's never gonna, never gonna go away. It's always there. And that's it. I let it go. You were brought up in a very bad environment. I was brought up in a very bad environment. The damage is done. It's not, You're not going to fix it. Now get over it. See it for what it is, and let's move on with this new being that's in us. That's not that. I'm not that.
And celebrate.
And celebrate it, and celebrate God, pure love with another. I don't need anything from you. I don't want anything from you. Just share time with other people from that place, that integrated place of love and confidence and being in our soul, connecting with our soul, and not that scared Alan and that scared Paul, my God, what a mess they are,
They are. They're not very fun. They're not very fun at all.
They screwed everything up. Well, this is
Paul. I thank you so much for this incredible conversation. May 10th, we're going to have, and I'm actually going to put this in the show notes, and we're going to start promoting the Awakening. That is going to be coming at the end of the year. I'm super excited to be able to attend and sponsor, but very, very excited.
And be a speaker.
Oh, and speak. Two of my favorite things to talk about: business and psychedelics.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah. Let's do a call. We'll do a planning session and figure out what kind of workshop you want to do. We have the pre-conference workshops as well. So that's a day. I'd like to get you in there also, and do some sort of experiential type of workshop.
Awesome.
With leaders. With the leaders. See you later.
You're the greatest.
You are too. I love you, Alan. I think of you all the time, and just in that.
Yeah.
I want you to be successful. I like what you're doing, and you're part of our tribe for sure. You're part of our family already.
Thank you. This is Alan, and this is Numa.
Yeah. Thank you. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.